Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the sanctuary of Mr. Magazine, the only broadcast where we do not merely skim the surface of the headlines, but dive deep into the psychological and emotional currents that drive the world of celebrity. We are honored to have you with us as we dissect a story that is less about gossip and more about the integrity of the human spirit in the face of a digital hurricane. Before we unravel the complex tapestry involving the stoic Sıla Türkoğlu and the Honorable Halil İbrahim Ceyhan, I must ask a small favor of you, our loyal sophisticated audience. To ensure you never miss these in-depth analyses, please subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell. If you wish to support independent, high-quality storytelling and help us keep the lights of truth burning, consider clicking the To Join button to become an elite member of our community. Your likes, comments, and shares are the heartbeat of this platform. If you have navigated the turbulent waters of social media in recent weeks, you have undoubtedly felt the pull of the eddies and whirlpools of speculation that have threatened to pull the reputations of good people under the dark surface. We are speaking, of course, of the relentless narrative surrounding Sıla Türkoğlu and Halil İbrahim Ceyhan. For days, the digital sphere has been choked with whispered claims, exaggerated tales of temper and tension, and forensic threads dissecting every look, every sigh, and every split-second moment captured on set. It is a phenomenon peculiar to our modern age. Every glance is inflated into a headline, and every silence is treated like a confession of guilt. Sıla Türkoğlu, an actress who has built her career steadily, brick by brick, through one demanding role after another, suddenly found herself at the epicenter of a narrative that never asked for her permission to exist. While the noise rose to a deafening crescendo, reverberating through fan forums and gossip columns alike, Sıla chose a path that is increasingly rare in the attention economy. She chose silence. It was a calm, deliberate, and protective silence. The kind of quietude that some might mistake for surrender, but which the wise recognize as the highest form of strategy. However, anyone who has ever watched a storm rage from behind a pane of glass knows that while silence preserves dignity, it comes at a steep cost. In the absence of her voice to guide the narrative, the rumor mill roared louder, filling the vacuum with noise. Anonymous accounts posted their interpretations as if they were sworn eyewitness testimonies. Speculative threads morphed into absolute verdicts. In that empty space where her defense should have been, even the most absurd stories found a foothold, hardening into a truth that was nothing more than a collective delusion. Just when it felt as though the slant of the conversation would calcify into something irreversible, damaging a reputation built on years of hard work, a voice rang out. It was steady, it was clear, and it was unmistakably personal. That voice belonged to Halil İbrahim Ceyhan. You could almost hear the tectonic shift in the atmosphere when he stepped into the light to address the chaos. This intervention did not happen in a dark corner or through a cryptic social media post. It happened at a recent high-profile event, the kind of environment where microphones crowd close like hungry birds and camera flashes blink without ceasing. In a moment where many stars would have ducked away, offered a careful, diplomatic smile, and glided past the controversy, Halil stood his ground. He stood still, grounded in the way only someone who knows his own moral center can. He listened to the questions likely laced with the poison of the rumors, and then, without theatrics or performative anger, he answered them. He did not speak of scandal, he spoke of the grind. He spoke of years of collaborative work and long days spent under brutal studio lights. He spoke of a colleague he respects profoundly, a woman whose discipline does not crack even under the heaviest filming schedule. He spoke of Sıla Türkoğlu, not as the silhouette carved by malicious gossip, but as the person he knows, the professional who shows up prepared, who minds the minute details of her craft, who learns her lines to the marrow and then finds the soul behind them. It was not a speech that felt crafted by a panic-stricken publicist. It felt like a hand placed firmly on a shaking table, a line drawn in the sand without ever raising a voice. This moment of defense brings us to a crucial question about the nature of loyalty in the public eye. I would like to pause here and ask you, our discerning viewers, do you believe that silence is the best response to false rumors, or is a vocal defense always necessary? And how rare is it to see a co-star stand up so firmly for another in today's industry? We are incredibly curious to read your perspectives in the comments below. And remember, if you value this level of detailed analysis, hitting the join button helps us continue to bring you these stories with the depth they deserve. Somewhere in those measured words, one could hear the echo of countless nights on set, the kind of relentless grind that makes people either family or strangers. He alluded to the reality that long days of exhaustion can make a single misread glance look like tension from a distance. When up close, it is merely focus, fatigue, or the whirlwind of the acting process. To hear Halil tell it, most of the drama being peddled to the public was nothing more than a magnifying glass held over tiny, ordinary human moments, sold as scandal to a hungry audience. In his telling, the storm was not proof of wrongdoing, it was proof that success never walks alone. The reaction to this intervention was immediate and palpable. Fans flooded social media timelines with gratitude, creating a wave of positivity that began to push back the tide of toxicity. Industry veterans nodded in quiet recognition of a man standing up for a woman's professional integrity. Even those who had stood at the edge of the rumor tide, ready to believe the worst, felt the ground tilt under them. Back in Sıla's inner circle, we are told that a profound relief washed through the room when Halil spoke. This was not because someone came to the rescue of a damsel in distress, Sıla is far too strong for that archaic trope, but because someone who truly knows her, who has witnessed the hours and the work behind the image, chose to say it out loud when it mattered most. That kind of support does not erase the noise entirely, but it carves a clear path through it. And still, the poised silence from Sıla continues, but sources suggest this will not last forever. Close insiders indicate that Sıla is preparing a statement. This will not be a hasty reaction tweet, but a careful and comprehensive response, crafted not in the heat of offense but with legal and professional guidance. If she chooses to speak, it will be to set the record straight once and for all, not to chase every rumor with frantic denials. Her strategy, we are told, is rooted in patience, because she understands that a career is not defined by a post, and a reputation is not a short story. When she speaks, she wants every word to count. Let us not pretend the timing of these rumors is an accident. With Sıla's rising profile, every move she makes has been amplified by the lens of stardom. Every smile, every pause, every rumor becomes a runaway snowball rolling down a mountain. She has been placed on a pedestal by the public and then asked to prove she isn't afraid of heights. In that rarefied atmosphere, it doesn't take much for whispers of tension or disagreements to catch fire. But as Halil reminded the room, the so-called signs of turmoil often reflect nothing more sinister than pressure, artistic stakes, or the intuition two actors bring to a scene full of sharp edges. He also spoke eloquently about the cruelty of the digital arena. The way a story multiplies without being checked, the way a whisper becomes a verdict because it is repeated enough times. He called for restraint, for empathy. To put it simply, he asked everyone to remember that a person's life and livelihood are not toys for idle afternoons. That request landed because it didn't come from a place of outrage, it came from a place of steadiness. Now, the question on everyone's lips is, what will Sıla say, and when? The industry is watching, quietly and very closely. Will she go point by point, correcting the storyline that others tried to write for her? Will she address the rumors directly, or turn instead to a larger truth, one that centers on respect, on dignity, on the right to protect one's name without feeding a fire that doesn't know how to stop? We do not know yet. But we do know this, the anticipation is real, and the moment she chooses to speak, the balance of power will shift again. For now, Halil's stance has bought time and space, precious commodities in a world that rarely allows either. He took a narrative that was spiraling into chaos and anchored it to something solid: memory, experience, and observation. There is a lesson in all this for every fan, every follower, and every commentator with a quick take. We often want the rush of a reveal, the thrill of the gotchas moment. But what if the truer story is slower, quieter, and more valid precisely because it doesn't try to win the internet in 10 seconds? What if the truth needs time the way a candle needs oxygen? What if you protect what matters by refusing to feed what wants a spectacle? Where there was snickering, there is now hesitation. It is much harder to sell a cheap story once someone you respect has called it what it is. The eyes of the industry are fixed on the days to come. On the statement that may arrive. On the grace with which Sıla will likely handle a situation she did not ask for. On the continued steadiness of Halil, who chose not to weaponize his voice but to use it to steady the floor beneath a colleague. Some will inevitably spin even that into romance, into plot lines, into something it never claimed to be. Let them. Reality has its own quiet power. This story isn't ending so much as turning a page. If we learned anything today, it's that real loyalty doesn't need a drumline, and real clarity arrives when someone who doesn't owe us a speech decides to speak anyway. We will keep our ears open and our standards high. The moment Sıla shares her side, you will hear it here first, with the context and care it deserves. If you appreciated this deep dive into the truth behind the headlines, please subscribe to Mr. Magazine, like this video, and share it with those who value integrity. Don't forget to click the join button to support our work. Until next time, remember, the loudest voice in the room is not always the one telling the truth. Goodbye for now.